I go out here if there's something in town, I read the paper, I just get out, I just do something out in the garden. So people told us constantly that keeping active in all those ways. So A for active jumped up from the research, and then belonging. That came up all the time of having good friends. The more friends you had, the more likely you would stay mentally healthy or cope with problems when they came up. For two reasons: you could get things off your chest, so that's nice and cathartic. But also, if you had a wide circle of friends that you kept in touch with a lot, or organisations and so on, you would be more likely to know people who could help you when you faced crises and problems and so on. So that cathartic thing came up too, but people also realised that you shouldn't overdo it. So the barn burned, the cow died, the crops failed. He says, knock it off, this is happy hour. So that gave us the B, act, belong, and then the third thing we had to figure out was what was a C that was related to what people knew and thought was good for their mental health. And this came from the question when we talked to people about what are your happiest times. A lot of overlap between what Seligman would call authentic happiness, true happiness if you like, and good mental health, that contentment with who you are and so on. So this question here, what are your happiest times? And this things that people came up with were, apart from a spa bath with a Playgirl or Playboy bunny and a cruise somewhere and a bottle of Veuve Clicquot or whatever it might be, then you got underneath that and people said, well, you know, when I helped the kid next door, parents are a bit dysfunctional, going for their TEE. I felt really good when the kid passed. Or, you know, I'd go and help somebody down the road and they're in a wheelchair, so I take them and help them do their shopping. Or I fixed the washing machine. The missus thought I was a real clunkhead when it came to mechanics, but I fixed the washing machine and it's still working. Or, you know, I got 3 goals in my last netball game or whatever it might be. So achievements from effort and doing good for others, and all those sorts of things that give us meaning and purpose in life. So that's how we came up with our third C for commit. Commit to a cause, commit to a challenge, or commit to helping others. And the other good thing about this is that it does appear in the media. As I said before, it's based on what people already intuitively know. So this is Pizzuto 78. She counts on music, painting, and physical activity to clear her head. And this fella, David Goldberg, nothing gives him more satisfaction now than his voluntary work with Rotary. So these sorts of things are popping up in the media as well, which we knew would reinforce our message. So given those results of and developing up our strategy, we went back to Healthway and they said, well, in fact, the other thing that happened is Healthway took these results off to the health department, to the Office of Mental Health, who sat on them for about 18 months without doing a campaign. So Healthway came back to us and said, well, you've done the research, who should we get to run a campaign like that, because the Office of Mental Health won't do it. So we thought of what NGO might be suitable, and we didn't necessarily want the Heart Foundation or diabetes or cancer that are associated with their smoking and diet and other sorts of things. So we couldn't quite think of an NGO in the mental health area, at least in Western Australia. Relationships Australia had some sort of expertise in running campaigns before about make time to talk and so on. So Healthway then said, will you guys run it out of the university? And so we said, sure, we'll do that. So we gave them a massive multi-million-dollar proposal, and they came back and said, yeah, well, here's 6 months, go out and do a feasibility study. So which we did, and Ray James, who joined us at that stage, Ray had a lot of contacts in community health out in the country areas, so he talked to people in different towns and said, this is our idea to run a mental health promotion campaign. Would you be interested down there? And we got enough support back from the towns that we targeted to say yes. So we submitted a full proposal to Healthway, and they said, okay, run a 2-year campaign. And we selected these 6 towns to represent mining, remoteness, nice middle class areas on Albany and Esperance, Geraldton, another port, mixed farming outside, and actually a major drug importation area as well. Kalgoorlie's mining and Karratha is mining. The idea was we got funding to put a half-time person in each of those communities, and WA Country Health Services funded another half of a person in each of those communities. And they were located within WA Country Health Service, and people had to form their own steering committee, get on the phones, make their contacts. We travelled to each town, had a community forum, much like this, where it varied from about 40 to Karratha. There were about 85 people turned up that were interested in positive mental health from all areas, from TAFEs and tourism operators and rugby clubs and all other sorts of things, formed their little group and decided what would be the objectives for their town. So this is was autonomous right from the start. For example, a rugby club guy said, well, I know what we'll do. We normally have a game and then all the blokes sit around and get pretty tanked up after it and go home. And nobody ever meets anybody else's family or anything. So what we'll do once a month, because we don't want to overdo it, we won't drink, but we'll bring our partners and children along and they can get to know each other and so on. And at least that'll be a sort of way that we can all get our networks out into the community. So there were all sorts of ideas came up, and provided they were all consistent with our principles, people could do what they like. So this was our basic model. The project officer parachuted into town. There are organisations on the left, there are people on the right. Our aim was to help those organisations get people involved in them and more active, and also help those organisations cooperate with each other. So our project officers were really skilled in a lot of those people skills, health promotion activities, other sorts of things. So our objectives, communication behavioural, for individuals, you can and should do something about your mental health. It was really just putting it on the agenda. It wasn't there. You know, if you said to people, what do you do about your physical health? Well, I know I've got to watch my diet, I know I shouldn't smoke, I know I shouldn't drink too much, I know I should get my sleep and all that. They know it, they don't necessarily do it, but basically people know it. If you say, well, what do you do for your mental health? It's really situational. Well, if I feel really crazy, I go to the pub or I go for a walk, I do something. There's nothing proactive in that longer term that is saying I'm going to strengthen and build my mental health. So part of it is simply, well, hey people, you can and should do something about your mental health. For organisations that we wanted to get involved, your organised activities can improve people's mental health. A bigger raison d'etre for, well, your reason for being is bigger than you think. And your involvement with us will help you achieve your objectives. So our project officers offered their grant writing and event planning assistant, links to other groups, marketing expertise, some merchandising. Great for little organisations out in country towns to get a few water bottles or T-shirts or other sorts of things to hand out to their supporters and people who come along. And we also had mass media advertising and would help them get publicity for that. So we ran these sorts of ads in the local newspapers. Those act, belong, commit, get involved ran on the right-hand side of the pages. So as people flicked through, hopefully by the time they got to the third one, they said, well, hang on, I better go back and read the first couple now, rather than just flicking past. So, and then these bigger one, what makes you happy, what does it mean to be mentally healthy? Feeling blue, act green was probably our most popular ad that we ran in the press. Here's some just responses. I've been through therapy and antidepressants. I'm okay now, but I feel I could be enjoying life more. I just feel flat. Your campaign says there are things to do to feel better, just mope around. This is the Forza Dragon Boat Club in Bunbury. They want to become a partner. How do we go about doing this? I'd like more information on clubs for single people. I'm not quite sure about this one. I do like being outdoors, but I work during the week. I also like yoga, like to do something creative, etc. Could you email me through some information? So the sort of stuff we get is organisations respond, people who are okay, just want to feel better, respond, and people who do have mental illness problems or other, they all respond. They all see things in it that perhaps we didn't think were going to be there in the first place. My self-imposed isolation in Northern worked fine, settled in after a coffee with Amberley, who was the project officer up there. I found myself handling the publicity for this Festival of Faith, Healing and Harmony. Then introduced to somebody in a writing group, an Aboriginal lady, now writing her life story from a single phone call, many of these doors open. So people from all walks of life respond. I had a suicide survivor come up to me last year saying that, well, first of all, she said she used to be in my MBA class, which I didn't remember, but she said, I wasn't here to tell you that. She said, I just came to thank you for the campaign because I'm a suicide survivor and I care for a suicide survivor. I'm very well qualified, but of course I can't work. And so I was sitting at home moping around, and I saw your campaign, and I thought, well, I can work. I can actually go out and do some volunteer work, and I can go and do some accounting, financial advice for NGOs and so on. So she said, I just want to tell you that. So I'm out and about and having a good time. This is the Feeling Blue, Act Green, how these sort of things worked a bit there. At the same time as we run the ad, we put out a press release. So we've got this Esperance Weeds Action Group, our person, the Parks and Gardens, the Department of Environment Conservation and so on. So especially the Weeds Action Group, which are looking for volunteers and they want publicity for their actions. So we get our message out, they get their message out. There's something concrete that you can do. You can ring the Esperance Volunteers Group and join in. And then an artist saw the ad and said, I'd like to paint a mural. So this is at the Northern football oval where people drive in. There's a large mural there with the Act Belong Commit slogan up there. And I don't think you can quite see it, but this says Feel Blue, Act Green along the top. Just some examples of things that went on, from rock concerts for kids to ballet, Sir Optimist International. They adopted the slogan, we act locally, we belong to a global community and we commit to making a difference. So again, just allowing them to do it their own way. Saving Animals from Euthanasia, very strong supporter in one group. TAFE, Kalgoorlie Aboriginal Kids, Intergenerational Teddy Bear, Thai dancers. This was a very good story. We asked well I didn't, but the project officer asked the Aboriginal girls up there what they would like in the town. They said, we don't have a netball team. And they said, we would really love one. So went along to a corporate sponsor, got a bit of money, got them a coach. So there they are, the Millen Street Mob they're called, with their other corporate sponsor and us, and they won the premiership in their first year. So also an example of, we're looking for sustainability, that when our project officers leave, there's something going on and still going on there. The impact on organisations that partnered with us, ratings on us at how much we improved these sorts of things, grant submissions, staff expertise, all those sorts of things improved the expertise within the organisations, and they liked us, they liked our things. Of course, one reason they liked us is we got about $300,000 worth of grants in for them in the first 18 months or so. On individuals, over the 2 years we reached 65%. When we said, well, did it change the way you thought about mental health and mental illness? Yes, it did, said 16% of the total sample now. How did it change that? Well, it made me think more proactively about my mental health. It also made me change the way I thought about people with a mental illness. And did it change your behaviour? 9% of those said, yes, it did. I went out, I volunteered, or I got more active, or I joined a book club, or I made sure I was this or that. And I changed the way I behaved around people with a mental illness. So it has a destigmatising impact as well. WA Country Health Services already incorporated in their JDFs before the campaign had finished. Local government and others were coming along to ask us to join. And the main thing was it took mental health out of the health department and put it fairly and squarely in the community. Statewide campaign, I think I'm going over time, so I'll make this very quick. 2008, 2010, when we went back to Healthway then and said, well, yes, a mental health campaign can work, can have impact, particularly if it's based in the community. There's now a lineup of people wanting to join the campaign, and we got funding for another 3 years. The Office of Mental Health still kept their contribution minimal, but Lottery West gave us a good chunk of money too. And as the other organisations were starting to line up, and I'll show you some of those. The model changed then. We couldn't afford a project officer in every town in Western Australia. But WA Country Health Services wrote it into the JDFs of their people out in the country areas. Of course, it dropped then sometimes to a 0.1, 0.2 of their time on Act Belong Commit, along with all of their other health promotion things. But at least it was in the system at last.